see it.
Yeah. We're on?
Yeah.
Wow. No preparation.
Sorry.
Oh well.
Once it's like you start streaming, and then whenever the computer decides to do it.
Ah, not instantaneous
Mm-mm.
ignition fire.
No, ignition.
Eventually.
Maybe we're gonna fire. Oh,
Well, uh, today I thought I'd ramble on about plumbing fixtures. If you have a mind to, you can actually get into uh, the style of fixture. You know, so you can get all different kinds of finishes, colors. But what I was saying was styles. Um, there's a lot of really neat styles out there, but you pay dearly for them because they're not making a lot of them. So if they don't make a lot, then it costs more. And quite often it takes a little bit to get them to work. It's like if you had they make one that is like a bowl, which you might have seen that in many different instances, but a bowl where it has like an old pump housing that unloads into it, and the handles are on the sides. So you literally have three separate holes that are not like a regular faucet, um, but it looks elaborately nice. The sink itself sits in a special hole, um, and the drain, it goes down through a cabinet. It's not it's not easy for the guy who's putting it in, but that's not the point. The point is you wanted it, and it looks neat, fits the style in your bathroom or your kitchen. It wouldn't be a kitchen one. Um, so that fixture, you're going to spend more money on the style because they don't make a whole lot of it. It's not everybody wants that. It's not a so the more you make of something, it's like the Model T end up being cheaper later on because they made so much of it that they were able to reduce the price. So it literally went down from like, I don't know, like $900 to 250 in a period of years. So again, it applies to these kind of fixtures, the things that are unusual, that is not commonplace. You're going to pay more for because there's less of them. It takes more to make it. There's a little more effort, and that's why you want it, because it's different, and therefore you're going to pay a different price than an average price. Um, so when you're putting that together yourself, be prepared to be frustrated, and just take your time. It's usually with anything tedious, you don't want to be in a pinch, if that makes any sense. You don't want to be in a hurry. You want to take your time with that stuff. And you don't want your repair person to do that either, because that particular faucet usually comes with a cabinet, and most of your cabinets now are particle board. The slightest bit of dripping because he just didn't quite get it tight enough, or maybe one of those hoses on that was leaking. Uh, he's going to have to be a very patient person. Now, I'll tell you what I used to do, because they would send me to really fancy houses. Sometimes I worked for the Handyman Connection, really high end houses, and of course they had lots of insurance. He used to brag about $12 million worth of insurance. Uh, but we had a problem. They said they wanted me to make sure that I didn't have it either, and so I put tissue paper or paper towels, tissue paper particularly, because I could tell if it dripped any at all. I could see right away. So the customer would be like, "Why is he putting tissue paper under my cabinet, under my sink?" because I just did not want to lose a cabinet that the whole kitchen is custom made. You imagine ruining a cabinet, and now you've got one cabinet you can't match all the rest of it very easily. It's going to be very expensive. So just take your time as a repair person or the person who owns it. One of the things that I've noticed and I don't really like very much is the connection between the spray nozzle for the kitchen sink and the supply. It'll end up with a plastic snap together pieces that first of all it's got to be after some time it's got to be hard to get apart, and I can't imagine it not breaking. It's going to break because that's what plastic does eventually. So I'm alarmed at that. I'd rather see real hoses, the kind of hoses that they put on another type of fixture in the kitchen sink, and that is where the nozzle pulls down and has some of them even have a light on them. Uh, I got to imagine, I haven't had to repair one yet. Usually they just replace the whole faucet, but there's a light in there. So that requires a battery of some kind. And you push that light on and you can see in your, I guess, darker sink bottom. I can imagine that would be quite expensive to pay somebody to change that bulb, or, well, I don't guess you would change the bulb, maybe, and or the battery for it. Imagine that. But it's really neat. Also, that pulling it down all the time, there's a weight underneath that sink, and that's going to wear out sooner or later, that movement. And again, that's where you want your repair person or your installer to take time that weight underneath there doesn't catch on the other hoses and eventually just wear a hole, or get in a kink. Those are all things that I've seen before. I don't remember doing it myself, but
I've gotten that one in the baby room stuck.
Yeah.
A couple times.
See, and I did that.
Well, you didn't put the box in there because I did that.
Right, and so those things that are really elaborate and really nice, it's good that you can get what you want and what makes you feel good, at least for the moment. And it's good that you can change it to what you want. But keep in mind, you don't want to rush whoever it is to put it in. You want to take they want to read the instructions. I used to have a real problem because I would travel way out into the country, maybe an hour away from any Lowe's or Home Depot or anything like that. And I'd buy a faucet at Home Depot, get all the way out, install, tear out the shower and the bathtub, put in a new bathtub, new shower surround, and the faucet would be missing one screw. So I'd have to drive all the way back to Lowe's, and then they say, well, you got to return the whole faucet, we'll give you another one. I was like, how about you just give me the screw, and then you take that one that's missing the screw and return it. I really don't know. I got to talk to my manager about that, And what's, a true irritating thing is if you drop that little screw that holds the handle on, let's say, down into the drain, now you got to try to fish it out. And I have had to crawl underneath houses to see if I can get it out of the trap on a mobile home. So I make it a point to put things in that drain in the sink or the bathtub before I start taking things apart or putting things together, because Murphy's Law. So those faucets really a lot of times the instructions need to be read. Although I will say the instructions on whoever does the instructions really isn't somebody who's ever put them together. So quite often you're like,
does those instructions?
huh?
Do you know who does those instructions?
No.
A copywriter.
A copywriter. Well, they
You've
should
never
find.
touched them.
They should have the copywriter interview an installer. Yeah.
I'm serious.
I don't think and I don't think AI is going to do any better. But a lot of times it's translated, and you can kind of tell it in the instructions if it came from China, and it's in. A lot of stuff comes from China, and isn't that a shame?
I am about to replace vinyl skirting on a mobile home with metal roofing. The mobile home sits high and dry, so no water. Oh, we have a video on this. So no water never stands under it. Is it necessary to add vents to mobile home skirting?
Okay, so we're gonna take a break from the faucets, and I'm sure I've got more malarkey to spit out about them. But as far as your skirting, and that's what this really is about. This is a place for you guys to ask questions, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. All right. So the vents are to dissipate moisture in a house. So if a house were, first of all, a regular conventional built home has block walls that come up and support it. And those block walls don't just sit on the dirt. You dig footings in, quite often deep, but at least a foot, 16 inches of concrete is down in there. So water running against the house, generally, 99 times out of 100, that is not going to be a problem with water running underneath the house. But if you were to get any kind of moisture underneath the house, you would want it to be able to get that moisture out of the air so it doesn't stay underneath the house, cause other kinds of problems like mold or things like that. Now, is that a problem in real life? No. When it comes to mobile homes, your skirting is not footing. Okay, doesn't have block generally. Even if it does, you still end up with issues of water seeping underneath, and it can happen on a house too, on a hillside. Moisture can get in there and stand. But understand this, a mobile home has a plastic barrier where a house does not. So that plastic barrier protects it from moisture getting to the bottom of the house. And I've seen this over and over again, repair people will put in insulation tight to the floor and wrap the ductwork really good and not have that sagged in the middle that between the frames that a mobile home does. But understand what that does is allow the heat from the ductwork to radiate down onto the other plumbing so that it does not freeze. That would be the supply lines mostly, but also on drain also. So the heat kind of radiates down and keeps all that plumbing protected. And you go and pull that moisture barrier up, and that insulation, albeit not much, up, all of a sudden all that, and then you have to run that pipe through the floor. Now you can do all that, but you're losing what its actual design was for. It's a lot more labor to rectify it. Now let me get back to what the moisture barrier on the bottom of the mobile home is not present in a house. It's just exposed studs or floor joists and insulation. So it's much more of a problem for a house because that moisture could get to the bottom of the insulation, cause it to sag down, could cause problems with the floor if the insulation disappears or just gets around the insulation. So a house has much more of a problem than a mobile home does with moisture, okay? So therefore a house would say, okay, we need to prepare for that by opening vents in the summertime, but guess what you do in the wintertime? You close them because you don't want to get cold air under your house.
I'm also dropping the link into the chat.
Yeah,
for
we've got
the
videos on it.
video.
So, which I don't mind being wordy about it and explaining more. But okay, if you are concerned that you do need vents on a mobile home, and one of my problems is now they're having everybody put plastic down like they do in a house on the premise to keep the moisture from coming up underneath on a conventional home, coming up underneath and standing underneath there, and the vents don't work. So now they're having mobile homes do that. The problem with that is a mobile home has that moisture that runs down the hillside also, and then it literally stands on top of that plastic like a plastic pond. And how do I know that? Well, because I've had to crawl through that water that's standing on top of the plastic. And the moisture that's caused by that plastic staying there is the enemy of a mobile home, much more than a regular conventional home. So, again, do you need vents? Technically, no. But if you want to think about it, the ribs, which are 3/4 to an inch high every 9 inches or so, I think, unload underneath your top trim. And that, when the wind blows by, literally vacuums up and causes you can tell that when you're underneath, it's cold underneath, or a difference in temperature between underneath and outside. Say the wind is really roaring cold out there or really hot and you're underneath, you can feel the heat going, different directions. So, that is actually venting.
Thank you for the tip. The vents are simple to install.
You can install them.
But it's not.
They are generally cause the metal. You have to maintain the metal edges because it'll
Rust.
It'll tend to rust. And if you don't do it when you cut through the ribs, a lot of times those raw edges can cut people. And the reason I make mention of that is there's some mobile home parks that prefer vinyl because their idea is that vinyl doesn't cut people. And if you ever installed it, you would know it does. But
Since I've been cut by both.
The kids might be playing around and then fall against the metal or the vinyl. And the vinyl, they say, would not hurt. So you want to be careful with the way. A lot of times, if you want to put vents in, you can turn it sideways and get in between the ribs, if that makes sense. Or you can go to the trouble of building up the height of the rib and then put it in. It's a journey and doesn't really, you will find you're not using them. But no, they are not necessary. They do not serve any real purpose for the mobile home. I'm sure the Southern Building Code will disagree with me, but
Or what's Southern Building Code?
Or anybody else's opinion. Yeah, but I'm promising you, in 30 years of crawling underneath homes, mobile homes particularly, that's my experience. You do not need them. But if they say you have to have them, guess what?
You got to.
So I wish you all the best on that. I find that on faucets that have a darker finish, you need to be careful about scratching. Seems weird, but you can scratch them. Sliding a pot underneath this little bit big, you bang it, ends up making scratches that are.
Oh, here's an interesting one.
That are almost permanent. What's that?
He wants to know, are solar panels worth it in your opinion?
Okay. That's a deep one. Yes. But the panels are not, they're the cheapest they're ever going to be, because the materials to make the panels and the process to make the panels are going to do nothing but get higher, a lot higher, because the materials are getting more scarce. And so right now, according to all the experts, they're about as cheap as they're ever going to be. And if you want to get in cheaper, you can get them used. A lot of times people go, well, you can go up, people upgrade after 10 years or something. So you got another, they want to say 25 years, but I'd say, another 10 of use. But this is how cheap you can get them. I know there was a company called Santan, but there's more. I even see them on Facebook Marketplace, which that's the only thing I do on Facebook. My wife puts videos out there, but I don't interact with people because it feels like a bunch of animals barking at a fence. But anyway, you can get panels, I think 310 watt, 300 watt, different sizes or wattages for as low as $75 a panel.
Really?
So then it gets to, can you wire it? And then then to me, the next thing, and I haven't really,
Batteries.
I haven't talked to people about it, and I haven't made any videos because I haven't done the experiment. But the problem is the batteries can cause fires.
You got a lot of people wanting you to do solar.
Yeah, I've got quite a few people that want me to do it, and I've been reluctant, not because of. It's the same thing as when I was talking about the faucets, where you want to take your time and not make a mistake. I don't want to burn somebody's house down with the storage. And you can cause, if you're doing shingles, I recommend you don't get solar panels on your roof. And I know that sounds like totally, but here's the problem with solar panels and shingle roofs. Well, no, because when those shingles start to deteriorate, you got to take all those panels off to replace your shingles. And then if you borrow money to, and it's a different mortgage, say you want to do payments on one, they don't always transfer with your mortgage when you sell the house. So it can literally be counted as a negative in the sale of your house, particularly if you've already got a 15-year, 20-year shingle, and it's got 10 years on it. We get a good wind or something, you blow off your ridge cap or some shingles on most of one side, or you get hail damage. They got to take it. It's not just a shingle roof repair.
He's like, wow, I didn't know they caused fire. They cause some wicked, gnarly fires. So
it's the batteries.
Those batteries are very dangerous.
So
it's poisonous gas.
What they're finding, and then you can look on YouTube and find some really massive, impressive fires. And they can't put them out. The Norwegians have made a way to put out car fires on those lithium-ion batteries. They use refrigerated saltwater brine, and they ram a pipe inside the car and then flood it with cold salt water, and it tends to put it out. I have seen them where they took those cars and dropped them in containers of water and they still burned. Those batteries, lithium ion, and it's in, I know I'm mentioning cars, but there's some impressive fires with cars. The lithium ion can create its own oxygen while it's burning. It doesn't need outside oxygen. You can totally close off the oxygen around it, and it can still burn inside. So, what I suggest, and this is what my inclination is to do on my place first, is to put your batteries away from the house, so that
and my chickens.
if and it needs to be ventilated. But most of the time, people they go out and put it right next to the house so it doesn't stand out too much. But the problem with all this is not the wiring. It's not the panels. Although the panels only have a certain life, and nobody knows what to do with them now. They can't recycle them. They're not even close to being affordable. They just toss them into a specific site. They're basically hazardous waste. The same with windmill blades. They just make graveyards out of them. But I think that solar panels can be very, very viable right now. But I think you need to study up on them like I'm supposed to do. I haven't done my homework.
And don't take the word of the solar panel people who are trying to sell them.
Mind you, the solar panel salespeople are not the ones who are installing.
And they're in a class. I don't know about all areas, but I know the ones in Arkansas are in a class action lawsuit right now.
Well, they promise like a used car salesman or a new car salesman fantastic things, but those people that are selling it to you are not responsible for the installation, or really they're desperate to get their sales. They're trying to make a living by convincing you something. And if it's not down in writing, it's not real.
When you get done with it.
That's the way it is with anything. If it's not in writing, it's not real. So, over and over again, people, including my own dad, get financed on a substantial,
How old is your dad? He's in his
80s.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be 84 this year. And I think he got in for 40,000, 60,000, something like that. And he's not, they promised him he wouldn't have an electric bill.
He's got both payments now.
Now he's got an electric bill and a payment. So, you need to look into what it costs. What will it reflect anything on your insurance? If you have shingles, I'd recommend you do not put them on your roof. And I know I see everybody doing it, but I believe most of those people are promoting a product and getting paid for that, or they're a YouTube star and they can afford to have whenever it gets time to take those panels off, put new shingles on, reinstall that system again, or just get new panels. There's a guy, what is his name? Will Prowse.
I would love metal roofing, but the cost of metal's through the roof. No pun intended. Of course it.
Well.
And then I have another question from the Childress family when you're done.
The metal roof, you might think it's more expensive, but in reality it's not. It's what they charge. Shingles, after your second layer,
you have to pull them all
you're going to end up pulling them all off anyway. Now you're looking at a massive amount
of labor,
of cost. It's and if you start checking into prices, the only reason that metal is more is because they can. It is not any. In reality, I can tell you this: I can beat in just about any. No, not just about. I can beat any shingle price.
And most of the roofing companies tell us we're charging too little.
Yeah, they get upset with me when they find out how much I'm charging. They literally come over and hey, can I talk to you for a minute? You're charging too little. Okay.
So a lot of that's labor.
I've even had comments on YouTube saying, "Hey, you should be charging more." I said, "Well, if I do a metal roof job and I make $1,000 in one day, I'm okay with $1,000 a day. Okay, and I can do that by myself if the weather allows. Wind can slow you down. But no, don't be discouraged by metal roofing estimates. You might consider doing it yourself or check around. The prices are just crazy what they charge. If you can literally buy the material and have them installed, then you know how much they're charging you. They don't like that because they don't want you to know how much they're charging.
Alkalite says, "Oh my, I'm totally going to look into it then. Thank you so much."
Yeah, and by the way, shingles blow off in a windstorm.
And you don't have nearly as much damage with metal. You just don't.
It just doesn't happen unless you got a 1 foot overhang.
Oh, that don't blow off like our.
Maybe you might get some problems.
Like our,
We just had 90-mile-an-hour winds come through, and it didn't blow the metal off the roof. It blew the framework off of a cover on one of our mobile homes,
porch.
A porch cover. It blew it over the top of one and 150 feet away onto another. So the metal is still fastened to the wood, by the way.
Okay. Childress family. Are mobile home power outlet boxes bad to cause fire? Someone told me I needed to update all of them.
Okay.
Talking about the...
It has nothing to do with mobile homes. It's just it's a habit you need to get into with any home that's 15, 20 years old. Particularly if you're using electric heaters, because they wear out outlets and they wear out the wire connected to the outlets. They really are more than the outlets can handle. So, how do you know if you need to replace them? When you plug in and it's too easy to plug in, that causes that outlet and that prongs of the whatever you're plugging into it to arc. That arcing causes it to get hot. That hot causes the plastic to deteriorate. That holds all the metal that they put together so it ends up burning the wires. So little electric heaters that you think, oh, I'll just plug it in here. Well, when you take out your outlet because it finally wears out, you'll see the wires burnt too. So, is it just mobile homes? No, it's not. It's really very little to do with mobile homes. It has to do with whether or not they're wore out. So, if you use the small heaters and things like that, or even in the sink where you might use a blow dryer, you're going to find out that outlet needs to be replaced. Okay, and it's really nothing to do with the wiring other than people live in those mobile homes for 25 years, 20 years, 15 years, and just abuse them. Don't maintain anything because they're broke. I understand. So that causes things to get loose. Loose causes arcing. Arcing causes fires. Does it happen in houses? Most assuredly does. Most assuredly happens that way also. If it is not maintained, if you abuse something, all those things are caused in a house, in a industrial building, in a commercial building, in a restaurant, in a mobile home. You just need to change them. So it's not gonna. It would be a good habit in the areas that you use a lot, that you leave things plugged in. I don't think a stereo anymore draws much. A TV doesn't draw very much. But like your refrigerator, your dryer, believe it or not, I've seen fires in houses and mobile homes from the dryer outlet. So if you got a loose connection in there, that's going to cause heat. Heat's going to cause it to deteriorate even faster, and you'll end up with a short that could cause a fire. And I've not seen a fire caused by a dryer, but I have seen that dryer outlet catch things on fire. So those outlets, it doesn't matter whether it's in a mobile home or a house, you should replace them after some time that they get wore out.
Okay. Do you recommend dripping faucets or draining and shutting off the water during long freezes for mobile homes?
Dripping faucets. Pencil lead, maybe more. That runs better. When you get further up north, you'll have to be concerned about your drains. Have to be insulated. I've not had to deal with that. We're in the middle of America. We get negative 21 a couple years ago. They said it was 19, but I was showing negative 20 where I was at for a week. Okay, it did some damage. I had people that were renting from me that decided they weren't going to be able to pay their electric bill, so they just moved out and leave the house with no electricity. And then think about the fact that the faucets would bust, because I've replaced all the plumbing with PEX. The Gray Quest is good too. It will take that 10% expansion and come back. But toilets will not expand. Faucets will not expand. Okay, so that's what I end up having problems with. So, negative degrees, temperatures, you want to, I'll tell you this, apartment complexes in our area put up signs and say, freeze warning, run your faucet, drip your faucets.
I am married to a handyman. How many times did my brooder room have the faucet freeze over because I'm a ditz and forgot to drip
Yeah,
the
we
water?
have a outside faucet that she connects her hose to, and she would forget to disconnect the hose, and the hose would freeze. That 10% expansion would slide up to the faucet, and outside faucet that goes in the wall it goes uphill, but and the shutoff is way back up in here, but the water expands through that hose, goes up inside that faucet and busts the faucet.
Well, that wasn't what I was talking about. I did that too, but I just forgot to drip water in the brooder room.
Yeah, if you forget.
The children's question is the outlet power box for a mobile home different from a standard power outlet box for a house?
Some of them. Um, some of them use a fiberglass, the old school brown with the old work tabs they call it, but I call it cut-in box. Um, but you know they can be a nuisance because you can't run a drywall screw or something into it. But now in the 90s, they tried to do the cover of the light switch and the outlet would all be the cover, and it wouldn't be a box, it'd be the pushed in wires into a prong. So the wire would sit in like so, and then another wire if you need to. But if you ever moved those wires, you would have bad connection. So you'd want to replace that. Those if you have that one piece cover, switch, and box, no, there's not a box, it's just where the wires come in. You have that, it's a good idea to replace those because they get loose where that wire slips in. It doesn't have any screws to tighten down. They just push them in. That was something that they did in the 90s. So yeah, they are different. Those are different.
So would you replace those with a?
I would. It's going to be a journey, because
if you're replacing outlets already, though,
you're going to have to add a box, which is you take an old work box, they call it Lowe's or Home Depot, but it's actually a cut-in box that has little wings that come out and squeeze up the box to it. And it's a little bit of a journey. You're replacing the box and the plug or switch and then a cover. And I run into that in kitchens particularly, and by the bathroom vanity sink. They just get wore out, or somebody else just takes a cord and jerks it out of it, and it ends up tearing up the drywall around it. So what you'll see people do is put a piece of paneling around that to give it strength to sit in there. But it's a journey. The 90s was full of mobile home people sitting in there, trying to figure out ways to save money, and they still do that. Some of the newer mobile homes don't even have plywood underneath the vinyl siding. They go straight to the studs, and
really,
there's a plastic over it. There's no plywood. Makes it lighter. So I want to get back to the batteries. I want to tell you one of the things on the solar batteries. One of the things that I saw was taking a electric car battery that's in the bottom of they're almost always in the bottom of the batteries or the bottom of the cars, and putting that away from the house, because then you can get a totaled out car. If by the way, if a battery car gets a dent in that bottom part of the car,
it's total.
they total it because they don't want that car you be driving around and pull it into your garage and then burn your house down. So they total it. So if you're thinking about getting an electric car, think about that. If somebody hits you in the side and it just dents in your door, but it just dents the bottom of that, there's a good chance they're going to total your car. So you need to think about that. So I was thinking about taking one of those car batteries and putting it away from the house in a building itself, because I think like a Prius setup, a new one, the new setup is like $2,000, and you'd have all that storage. So that's something you might think about. Your inverters are part of it. There's quite a few good brands of inverters. I don't know of any bad ones. Same with solar panels. I'm sure they make a bad one if you went out there and hunted, but in reality, they're over engineering them at this point. In order to keep it at a comparable price, they're probably going to start cheating on the designs. So my idea was to take and buy from that company Santan for $50 to $75, or maybe even $100 a panel. Put a bunch of panels up where I could clean them. You know, it wouldn't do you much good to put them up there on a roof and then you can't clean it. So dust gets on it. Even a bunch of snow gets on it, ice. You're not getting any electricity then. You might well want it because
you live on a dirt road, especially like we do.
Yeah, we're like 2 blocks off of on the dirt road, and we get lots of dust.
I can't keep up with it.
You know, over and over again, you're losing efficiency because with time, you know, things get on that and clouded up. So you need to be able to clean it. And I don't think anybody talks to you about that. You want to be able to, if you're not scared of heights, you can get up on your roof and squeegee it off every so often. I don't think my wife's going to do it. So if it was down on the ground,
I would clean it.
yeah, she would hire somebody. If it was down on the ground, you can get to it to clean it, if that makes any sense. So the batteries were what I was trying, but I know I was going to have to end up using money for wire to get away from the house and then back to the house. But I didn't want I know those batteries catch on fire, I would lose my home. And I don't want you guys to do that either.
Can't be near the chickens either.
Yeah, she don't want her chickens to burn. Fried chicken is good to some people, but not to her.
When you guys any monies as I do in that chickens. Just got a 2010 Ford F-150. Is that a pretty good truck? I know you're an old school truck guy.
2010. The problem I have with 97 and up Fords is in 97 they started doing plastic air intakes for and what happens with plastic is it deteriorates, it warps, and then it ends up getting a leak against the heads, and that water transfers through the intakes, but you know, quite often, or going from one side of the head, one part of the head to the other. That leak gets caused by that warping plastic. The water drops down into the cylinder, and then you blow a head gasket. 97 all the way into 2000 V8s.
I think the only one
2002. Then after that, they started going to cam phasers in 2000, I want to say 4. And man, those things are impossibly hard to deal with. But I will tell you one thing, the V6 Ford and the V6 Chevrolet, I've had both of those last 400,000 miles. I got one right now I'm driving that's got 333,000 miles on it, and it isn't smoking at all. Okay? The only oil it uses is the valve cover gasket.
And it's been run hard.
Yeah,
it was got by our 17-year-old.
It's got 5,600 pounds without a trailer on it. So when I roll over the scales, I know how much it weighs. So that V6 Ford and the V6 Chevrolet, they just didn't mess with it. Okay, they didn't. They just, oh well, that's our basic model, and they left it really, really dependable. The 2010 Fords, some of them have. You need to check into that. I mean, the cam phasers are a nightmare. I've not known very many people that have been real happy with, even when they've replaced them, had a professional do it, because they kick out of time. If you have those cam phasers, you might want to. I've known several people who got away from the Fords and went to Dodge, and then they had problems with Dodge. So they're doing way too much stuff plastic, way too much computerized. If you, by the way, if anybody would look into it, I ran into a guy who did a video, and he talked about why the trucks are getting bigger and bigger. The full size trucks is because the EPA requires us the smaller the truck is, the more gas mileage they require. So their solution, instead of getting better gas mileage, is to make the truck bigger.
Which we don't have any better gas mileage now than we did, what, 30 years ago?
No, I mean,
Well, not that 30
nobody's
years
making
ago.
the little tiny trucks anymore. The little S10s. They got a Canyon out there, and you know, and that's a mid-sized truck that's about the size of a full-size truck. But what it's the EPA pushing, and what their solution is, instead of getting better gas mileage, they got a bigger vehicle. So now you got these half-ton trucks that the hood is up to your chest, so you can't even hard to look inside. You have to get a stool to stand up there and change the oil, or to check the oil. I mean, I wish you all the best. Maintain. Everything requires maintenance, including relationships. Um, Everything requires maintenance. And I have more projects than you can count, or I can count, that I want to maintain. I got to fix that. So I'm not claiming to be an expert at it. I'm just caution you with the Ford. I know the turbos have problems. Anything turbocharged usually means less life.
Really?
Yeah, and it's been that way for hot rods for a long time. There are exceptions, and that's usually inside the Toyota, but they're much more reliable. Toyota and Hondas are much more. They build their engines. The Toyota does. It's meant to last. They design it to last. Whereas I think all those American-made vehicles now have gotten to the point where they don't want you to work on it. They made it so hard for you to work on it that their technicians don't want to work on it. They go in there. I know.
They don't have actual mechanics anymore, really. They have technicians.
They are
do the
part removal people. They don't diagnose anything. Let the computer diagnose it. I know I had a master mechanic who had a lot of certification. He worked for a dealership. There was a police car that came in with an electrical problem, and they worked on it for months. Okay, and they ended up giving them a new car because they couldn't figure out what was the problem. It would just constantly have a ghost in the machine. They replace parts, and that's what mechanics are. Parts replacers. I suggest you find the Toyota, which gets horrible gas mileage as a full-size truck.
Those are hard to come
The Nissan has got bought by the Fiat company, and I forgot the name of that company. And their quality fell off as soon as they did. Nissan had a real issue with their CEOs getting in trouble. But the Toyota is probably the premier, and I don't own one. I have a 79.
I wouldn't mind.
And then the Honda is behind it. You know,
I've already said if I buy it for a new car, I want a Toyota.
the older ones that you can work on, you fix. There's some of those have problems too. So, hopefully I gave you some answer. I'm a little bit worried about any 2010 anything. Everything is real expensive, and it doesn't make any sense.
And it's hard to work on, and it's very, very expensive at the small.
Paying more taxes. You want to buy a vehicle you don't have to work on. Guess what? I've seen brand new vehicles on the side of the road being towed in. That same dealer mechanic was telling me about brand new vehicles. I know somebody who bought a brand new minivan, Dodge or Chrysler, transmission cracked. Said it was normal. So anyway, there's no conscience left. And they're literally designing obsolescence so that you have to go back and buy more. Electric cars, they don't want you to work on it. They want you to bring it to them. If you work on it, you lose your warranty. So it's all foolishness. and we're gonna end up having to make choices. So, I'm gonna knock off early because I got a raging headache and I need to go to the little boy's room.
Looks like he's running fever.
Yeah, I don't feel good, but I do like you guys asking questions, and I love to share because there will be a time when I'm not around to share, and I'd love to give it to the world and anybody I would consider a friend, and people that I don't know. I'd love to give it to that experience to you, so you can have it. All right. We'll try to be back fresh and at it next Saturday. Ask me whatever questions, as silly ones as you can find, or as serious as you can find, and I'll try to give you an answer.
By the way, you're gonna have to cross off plumbing fixtures. We didn't really.
Okay. Maybe I'll go back into plumbing fixtures next week.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Get tired yet?
No.